It took me almost 9 years to make over $4.2 million on Amazon KDP. And if I had to do it over again, I'd follow these 12 truths that I will share in this video. I warn you, they're not going to be fun to hear, but if you're able to stick through all of them, I estimate that you'll be 10 times more likely to build a successful KDP business. But before I tell you how to make more money, you need to know one brutal truth. Many self-publishers are now struggling to make money from their books. How do I know this? Because I get message after message from people who run into the same problems. Either they're making sales from their books, but not a profit, or they aren't making enough sales to cover the time and money invested in creating the book. The Amazon marketplace is jam-packed with more books than ever before, but what if I told you that it's also better than ever? There are many examples of self-publishers who are now making more money than ever before. Am I saying that if we're able to produce books like the top publishers produce books, we too can see success on Amazon KDP? I don't see why not, but you need to fix the problem first. And it's not about making a copy of their books, but rather copying their methodology. That is why brutal truth number one is that the market is tougher now, but it's also better than ever for those who do it right. Now, what is the opposite of doing things right? Doing things wrong. Which is why what I'm about to talk about next could not just cost you the investment you made in your books, but possibly something much greater. In 2022, I got my KDP account wrongfully terminated. I woke up to every self-publisher's nightmare. Now, it's not all gloom and doom because I was able to get it back. Now, how can you do the same if in the worst case scenario something were to happen to your account? Or how can you stop it from happening in the first place? Brace yourself, because that is what this following story will teach you. I warn you, it won't be pretty. Between 1910 and 1912, Roald Amundsen and Robert Scott were racing to be the first to reach the South Pole. Scott had a clear advantage. Scott, he embraced modern technology, he bought motorized sleds, confident they'll speed up their journey, and he didn't waste time on unnecessary steps, focusing only on what mattered to get there quickly. Now, Amundsen, however, wasted time on outdated, unnecessary tasks. He trained his team to ski. Why do that when there are motorized sleds? And tested eating raw dolphin meat, things that were irrelevant to the race at hand. The result? Scott's team made heroic efforts during the journey, but didn't survive. Amundsen's team made it to the South Pole and back, safe and sound. You see, these motorized sleds that were supposed to speed up the journey didn't work like they were supposed to in the harsh conditions they were in. And these unnecessary steps Amundsen took were actually what saved his team. He was prepared on another level, and that's what made the difference. Hoping and wishing that things will go our way or dealing with problems when they arise is not the best strategy for becoming and staying successful on Amazon KDP. Therefore, I'm a strong proponent of practicing what Jim Collins called productive paranoia. This is not about being scared, but rather prepared so we can overcome any challenges that come our way. What are some simple steps we can take to do this? Number one, check for trademarks and copyright. Number two, back up everything. 3, diversify your income. 4, unpublish risky books. 5, stay updated on Amazon's policy. And number 6, build a brand. Now, there's one more step to take, and unfortunately, more self-publishers are making this misstep more than ever. I say unfortunately because the thing can completely wreck the chances of their success, or even worse, but more on that later. Because now let's talk about what I think is the most common mistake self-publishers are currently making, and so many are completely oblivious to it. It's easy to feel lost on Amazon these days. You put in the effort, but your book is buried among thousands of others. It feels impossible to get noticed. But here's what you might not realize. Simply creating a high-quality book isn't enough anymore. Plenty of authors and self-publishers are doing that. So what's really going wrong? The problem is that many books don't give readers a reason to choose them. If your book blends in with others, it likely won't sell like you hoped. Readers won't notice it, and Amazon's algorithm won't promote it. But what if you could give your book a competitive edge? By using one or more of 4 strategies, you can maximize your chances that your book gets the attention it deserves. Here are 4 ways to help you cut through the noise and give readers a reason to choose your book. Let's look at the book Lean Startup by Eric Rice to exemplify the first way. He didn't write a general business book. Instead, he focused on startup founders, a specific group with specific challenges. This narrow focus made his book stand out in the business world. So what is the first strategy? Focus on a specific target audience. The more targeted your book is, the more likely it is to resonate with a particular group of people. Next, let's look at Python Crash Course by Eric Mathis. He didn't write a generic programming book. Instead, he focused on hands-on learning or project-based learning. So another way to stand out is to have a certain approach to a topic or even cover a topic within a topic. So for example, another title could be Python Programming for Cybersecurity. That would cover another topic in the title, even though it's still within Python programming. Next, let's look at Chris Voss, who took a bold approach in Never Split the Difference. Voss argued that compromise is actually a bad strategy in high-stakes negotiations. The lesson: offer a unique angle. For example, by challenging the norm or giving readers something fresh. However, sometimes success doesn't come from doing something new, but from doing something better. So next time you're about to publish a book, pick one of these 4 strategies or more. By doing that, you'll drastically improve your chances of success. So now that we have a better chance of succeeding, we can just get going and scale to the moon, right? Well, not that fast, because if I were to start over today, I'd focus on doing less instead of more. This is why I don't want you to fall into the trap that many are falling into, thinking that simply doing more will solve their problems. But there is a caveat. Imagine this. Would you rather have 100 books on Amazon, each bringing in $30 a month, or one executed book bringing in $3,000 a month? The total amount is the same, but having one great book simplifies everything. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to create a book that makes over $3,000 a month, but it should prove the point that getting one book right can outweigh 100 mediocre ones. So the solution is not to publish more books, but to publish the right ones. Once you know how to consistently produce books like that, then you can scale. But here's the million-dollar question. How do we know what the right books are? Here's the problem. In the beginning, at least, we usually lack the perspective to say what is the right book to publish. This is a strong argument for quantity again, because once we've published several books, we will start to not only get data, but also begin to see patterns. Here's where another idea comes in. What Jim Collins called firing bullets first and then cannonballs in his book, Great by Choice. That means that we first do things on a smaller scale, and then once something hits, then we can go more all in. So for example, if our budget is $10,000, instead of putting all that money into one book, we spread the amount out over several books. So this is most likely the best route to take, but doing this approach can also lead to a trap that many publishers have fallen into, myself included. The less we invest in something, the less we feel invested in it. This means that because we feel less invested, we might not double check everything with the same care. I've wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, in both expenses, but also lost opportunities running Amazon ads inefficiently. How? Because I've had so many books that have hit the target on everything, but looking back, I can see that my way of running Amazon ads wasn't optimized. I had delegated that responsibility, believing that it was being run optimally, or rather, I put the blinders on and hoped that things were being done optimally. But as you've heard before, hoping and wishing, it's not a good strategy. It wasn't until I hired an outside expert on Amazon ads that I discovered my mistake. He said that my ads were roughly 60% optimized. So this is just one arena where if I'd taken the time to learn more and gotten feedback on my work from someone more experienced, I could have saved so much wasted time and money. According to the ancient Greeks, far more harm is caused in this world by stupidity and incompetence than outright evil. This was all caused by my own incompetence about Amazon ads, not the person I delegated it to, because I hadn't provided him with enough education and he also had other tasks to manage. I told myself, I'm more of a strategy guy. I'm a bigger picture kind of person. I don't like to get into the details. Well, by not diving into the details, I lost insights that formed the bigger picture and would have led to a much more optimized strategy. I have invested tens of thousands of dollars, if not over $100,000 into self-education. And so far, I've yet to regret getting educated by someone who is more experienced in what I'm trying to get better at. Yes, if you look at it from a short-term perspective, such as a month, then you might not see a return on investment. But if you zoom out and look in terms of years, you can see how a small tweak to one's approach can really shift where we end up. Just like if I had known what I know now in regards to Amazon ads, I would probably have made millions more because of the volume of books I have. Okay, so let's say you published the right type of book, whatever that now means. I would argue that the right book is the one that meets exactly what the readers are looking for or are intrigued by in terms of the concept. But there is one more thing that a lot of publishers overlook in their rush to make money, which actually hinders their ability to make great, consistent, passive income for years to come. Picture this. You publish a book, it makes $1,000 in the first month, $700 in the second month, and then $100 in the third month. In the fourth month, it's only making $20. Yes, while books can often do well at the start, especially if you're launching to a big audience, we ideally want to see a stabilization around a certain amount. In our example, the decrease is way too steep. The problem in a case like this usually comes down to one thing, because the book clearly has potential, as seen by the initial attraction. If we can fix this, we might even be able to create the opposite trend. Instead of going from $1,000 to $700, we go from $1,000 to $1,300 and upwards from there. So now picture how your book is not only stable in terms of the income, but you're also getting organic 5-star reviews posted regularly without having to do anything. People might even publicly be recommending your book via social media without your involvement. This happened because of one thing and one thing only. You got the quality right, which is a crucial component for scaling. Think of it like turning up the volume on a bad song. No matter how loud you play it, if the tune is off, people are going to tune it off. Amplifying the marketing for a low quality product is the same. You're just letting more people know that it's not good. But when you got a hit, turning up the volume, just like amplifying your marketing, makes everyone want to listen. Perhaps you can think back to moments when you have recommended another person's book without getting anything in return. I know I have many times on this channel, in fact. That's the power of getting the quality of the book right. Now, a counter argument might be that it only happens to super well-established books. That's not true. Here's one example of a self-published book that I've talked about and shown to people in real life because I'm fascinated by the topic. The quality of the content included in the book is high, in my opinion. Now, there are also certain things that are working for and against this book, which I think are the things you want to know. Let's start by going over what might be working against this book. Later in the video, you'll discover what is working for it. What if I told you that there's something that matters even more than the quality of the book itself? Because let's face it, there are probably millions of high quality books published that don't get near the attention they deserve. I found that they usually make one big mistake, which has 4 smaller mistakes underneath them. And what I've noticed is that the more I improve my books in these 4 areas, the more success I see with my books. That one thing is the presentation of the book. We've all heard the saying, don't judge a book by its cover. But that's simply not true when it comes to book publishing. People do judge a book by its cover. So in our example of the Bodyguard book, I think the book cover is one thing that is working against the book. Am I saying it's super bad? No, I'm not. I'm showing respect to the designer of the book cover. But I had my designer make a new rough draft so you can compare yourself to see which one you prefer. Are the versions I created perfect? No, I would make further tweaks to it. But they demonstrate the possibilities for improvements. In terms of the book title, I don't have much to complain about. It clearly shows what the book is about and who it's for, and it weaves in an authority component, which is a huge advantage for a topic like this. The book description also looks solid, and we see that the book has a lot of reviews which are positive, giving the book an average rating of 4.6 stars. So out of the 4 things that matter, I would say that there's primarily one thing that is working against this book in terms of the presentation, and that's the book cover. We can see that he updated from the original cover, but it's still not quite there, in my opinion. When we want to succeed with self-publishing, we want to do as much as possible to remove the guesswork. Far too long in my journey, I relied too much on my own assumptions for success. Too many times, what I hoped would work got overridden by the reality of what actually happened once the book was published. And that leads me to the next harsh truth, which I've learned actively publishing books on Amazon KDP for almost 9 years as of the recording of this video. Success isn't random. It doesn't happen by accident. And if you can find examples of when they do, I think they are few and far between. Perhaps you've been frustrated looking at people who aren't smarter than you, but who have achieved more in terms of financial success. I know I have. For a long time, I thought it came down to luck. These people are just lucky. And yes, while there could be a luck component at play, it doesn't paint the full picture. For example, in my case, I would argue that my luck, besides finding self-publishing, has been fairly average. If you think about it, I would have to be quite unaware if I'm not able to see patterns of what works and what doesn't, after seeing hundreds of thousands of books on Amazon and having published over 1,500 books myself. So once I stopped blaming success on luck and instead realized that there are patterns to success, I've only seen better and better results ever since. Success is as much of a mind game as it is a game outside of yourself. I believe that our biggest enemy to reaching success is ourselves, our own limiting belief, bad habits, and inability to take responsibility for our actions and results. But that's great news, because that means that if we can learn to master ourselves, then all we need to do is master a system that can bring us consistent success. That's why this truth is don't rely on luck, build systems for consistent success. Now, how do we do that? We look for patterns of what has been proven to work and model those patterns, whether that is publishing books in a certain way, running Amazon ads in a certain way, or tracking our books in a certain way. Success leaves clues, so there's often no point in reinventing the wheel. Unless you enjoy taking a long way around for no reason, like hiking up a mountain, when there's already a perfectly good trail. But there's one arena where good fortune can make a difference. And the good news is that the more we work on the right things in the right ways, the luckier we tend to get. This is what I will talk about next. But what if I told you that I have one book that made me $13,808 in 1 month on a platform outside of Amazon? Keep in mind that this book has also generated well over $200,000 on Amazon KDP. How is this possible when sometimes it just feels like we're publishing book after book, and some of them might not even be making $100 per month? It would take 138 books making $100 each month to make as much as that one book made on a platform that isn't even Amazon KDP. The harsh truth is that not all books will be hits, but one can change everything. This is called the 80-20 rule. Often, 80% of your revenue will come from 20% of your books. Knowing this, we can avoid becoming discouraged when a book doesn't connect as we hoped. The good news is that if we're able to get one book like this, it can lift the entire series, which means that those 80% of books that don't sell as well will also see an increase in sales because of those 20% of books that do connect. So the lesson here is to publish consistently. Consider building a series of related or relevant books and keep all the books in that series looking good. So when someone buys one of your books in your series, they are intrigued by your other books too. Lastly, stop and look up from time to time. Don't just continue with your head down like I did for way too long. First, it's not good for your mental health. And second, you want to analyze what works and what doesn't so you can correct it. Now, unless you've kept your head down for years, you would have noticed that something big has changed these last couple of years. We've opened Pandora's box and there's no closing it. Opportunities are being talked about everywhere and the fear of missing out is real. But just like the dot-com craze of the late 1990s, there's something more complex lurking beneath the surface. Unless we're able to unravel this complexity, we might fall into the same trap that many self-publishers are falling into currently. But first, let's talk about why this is happening. Writing a book takes a lot of time and effort. Can't we just use AI to make it all super fast? Yes, but that can be a mistake. If someone blindly relies on AI to do all the heavy lifting, it's going to write stuff that isn't as good as a human-written book. For example, AI often tends to repeat itself or write like a pretentious something. Now, if that's the style you're going for, go ahead. But the problem is that most readers won't appreciate it. Then the follow-up argument will be that someone would have found a way around it, and that's great. But there are even more complexities to unravel. For example, I've seen AI include misinformation, lies, or at the minimum, hype things up out of proportion. It may also overstep in terms of plagiarism and trademark. So what I want to get to is that I believe that AI can be an incredibly powerful tool, but it still needs a human touch, at least as of the recording of this video. Unless the angle that you're going for is that your books are completely AI created. I can see that angle work because I believe that there are a ton of people who believe that AI can do things better than a human. And in many cases, I believe this too. So for example, you might create books like this: Mastering Complexity, AI's Guide to Success, AI Wisdom, A Guide to Modern Efficiency, Think Smarter, Work Less, AI's Path to Productivity, the AI-designed Productivity Journal, your AI-powered planner, Stay Organized Effortlessly, 365 days of AI-inspired reflection. Leaning into the fact that it's AI created does two things. It gives the brand an authentic feeling that people appreciate, and it also appeals to a specific target audience. Just think of the rise of AI influencers, some of which have millions of followers, despite people knowing that they're not real. I might have given away $1 million idea here if it's executed properly. So I have a question. If you're not subscribed to this channel, then what are you doing? We talk about ideas, strategies, and ways to make money. So if you like money, subscribe. Now, unless I had an approach like that, I would only use AI to assist me. I didn't use AI for any of my 1,500 books. They were created by professional human writers and translators. I don't have anything against AI if it's used correctly, but using it correctly is hard to do, which is why I lean more towards using it for stuff such as idea generation, research that we as humans then validate, creating structure, summarizing or organizing information, and analysis. We do want to pay attention to it though, because it is evolving and getting better every day. And who knows, maybe in the future it will completely replace us as publishers, but until then, use it to speed up your work and increase the quality of it without over-relying on it. Now, let's transition into something that AI cannot completely replace or solve, but that can have a huge impact on your long-term success. Many self-publishers who have seen some success will sooner or later hit a ceiling. No matter how many releases they put out, if they're not aligned with what I will discuss next, they're always fighting an uphill battle. Imagine you're on a sailboat, you've caught the perfect wind, you're moving smoothly and quickly while others are stuck paddling, struggling to move forward. They're working hard, but you've learned how to use the wind to do the work for you. What I'm about to share is like catching that wind, helping you move ahead while others keep struggling. The people who hit a ceiling are often over-reliant on chasing transactions. This can work for a while and some make good money, but eventually older books can start to drop in ranks. Then the publisher has to work even harder to make new books succeed like the old ones did. In essence, there's no compounding put in place where one book helps fuel the success of another book. Now, I'm not talking about building a series of books because we've already talked about that. What I'm talking about here is that instead of solely focusing on transactions, we take a relationship-based approach. And don't worry, if you're anything like me, this might scare your efficient, focused brain a bit. This doesn't mean chit-chatting about unimportant stuff for 10 minutes. It's about focusing on the key things that matters when it comes to putting the compounding effect into play in areas beyond just making more sales. Because if we get this right, sales will usually follow naturally. What I'm talking about is the relationship you have with your readers and your team. For your readers, it's about listening to their feedback and applying it to your books. It's about consistently delivering value so that they see you as the go-to person for this topic or solution. When you do this, they'll naturally do things that benefit you and your business, like joining your advanced review copy team, buying your books at launch, or providing insights on topics or trends to cover. For your team, it's more than just asking how their day is going. Think about what they value most from you. Probably security. They're likely using the money you pay to support themselves and maybe even their families. If you know that's important, then your first priority should be ensuring you can provide consistent work and income for them. After that, get them involved in the vision so they feel they can achieve their dreams within your dream too. And note that their dream might not be about making a huge amount of money. I've learned that many people value feeling involved in something bigger and being appreciated for their work and effort, sometimes more than just making more money. So this is something that can truly create the snowball effect if you have everything that we've talked about so far. But there's one more thing that can unlock the compounding effect even more. And that's what I want to discuss now. Scaling isn't just about releasing new books. Many people focus on pumping out more content, but it's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. The more they pour, the more they lose without realizing why it's not filling up. The problem is, without what I'm about to cover, it's like they're flying blind. But with this in place, they won't just make more money, they'll keep getting better and better as publishers. What I'm talking about is creating feedback systems for your books, your readers, and your team, and using data to track and adjust so you can keep improving over time. Think about it. If you've been publishing or doing anything for a while, you might feel a bit embarrassed when you look back at your first attempt. I know I feel that way when I watch my older YouTube videos, but we need to realize that this is part of the process. We didn't know back then what we know now, so it's all how it's supposed to be. The only time it's not how it's supposed to be is when we don't use the feedback we get to improve. For example, for far too long, I wasn't tracking my books closely enough. I'm not saying you need to spend 50% of your time doing this, but even using 5% of your time to track, analyze, and adjust can make a huge difference. Not only will you learn, but you'll also improve your chances of your books taking off. So in essence, create systems for your team to improve through feedback, set up ways for your books to get better over time by encouraging readers to give feedback, and finally, track your results and make adjustments based on data. There are many software tools that can help you with this. As Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Now, some people will take this too far and decide to just stop instead of changing their approach, which is why what I will talk about next is so important. Without it, I wouldn't have gotten to over $4 million in royalty on Amazon KDP. In my 9 years of publishing on Amazon KDP, I've seen many self-publishers come and go. I myself went away from self-publishing for 6 months after hitting a roadblock. I was at $5,000 a month in income from self-publishing when I did this detour. After 6 months, I still received passive income, but it was now half of what it used to be because of my inactivity. I believe that there are 3 main reasons people walk away from self-publishing. Number 1, they are faced with some sort of challenge that they believe are preventing them from moving forward or growing. Number 2, they get bored. And number 3, they get the shiny object syndrome, which means that they think that another opportunity looks more promising. Let's tackle number 1 first. If we're faced with a challenge that is preventing us from moving forward, then a great question to ask is, are there any other people who have faced the same challenge and have overcome it? Most likely, the answer is yes. So that means that if others have solved it, so can we. They might even have shared or be willing to share how they solved it. Let's tackle the second reason why people quit. They get bored. Self-publishing is quite a linear process once you've mastered it. But one thing you need to keep in mind is that you might think you've mastered it, but what I've discovered and keep discovering is that there's always more to learn. There are always areas that can be improved, and by improving in every area, the results will follow. Another thing to keep in mind is that the feeling of boredom will most likely show up no matter what we're doing. Or there will at least be parts of what we're working on that will feel boring. And boredom is also relative. I'm sure that if we were sitting in a prison cell with nothing else to do, we'd be pretty excited to work on our publishing business. But with all the distractions we now have surrounding us, it's not as simple. So I always aim to do what I can to cut off the dopamine I receive from other sources. Because once you've tasted the dopamine that you get from setting a long-term goal and achieving it, everything else pales in comparison. The third reason people quit was because they think another opportunity looks more promising. Of course, it matters which boat we're in, but if you're drawn to self-publishing, you're drawn to it for a reason. And it is a business model that is proven to work. And especially if you've been doing it for a while and are seeing results, then why start something else and start from level 0? You are going to be competing with people who are at level 100 at this new thing that you're starting. It's better to continue on the same path for an extended period of time so you can get to the point where everything from your knowledge to the results start to compound. But unless we're doing things the way we've described earlier in the video, then all the perseverance in the world is not going to help us. That's why truth 11 is that persistence is key to succeeding on Amazon KDP, but we need to be persistent on the right things. We must track, analyze, and keep learning, and be willing to change our approach when new insights come up. Speaking of insights, do you remember how I said that there was one thing working for the book, How to Be Your Own Bodyguard, despite not having an optimal book cover? When you have what I'm about to talk about next, the presentation of your books, or even the books themselves, don't need to be the absolute best in order to sell like the best. Now, I warn you, if you're looking for quick money, easy come, easy go, then what we'll dive into now is not for you. This is for those who want a long-term sustainable income that doesn't need to be dependent on a specific platform. When you have this in place, algorithm changes don't scare you as much. The problem I see today for many publishers is that they are simply creating books that don't help their other books. But more than creating a series, they aren't fully leveraging their books in a way that can help their future books. So for example, they don't have an author page, so people cannot follow the author for future releases. Or they don't have a way to gather emails, which makes it impossible for you to ever contact that reader in the future. Now, am I saying you need to create an author page or email list for every book you publish? Not necessarily, depending on which stage you're at. But if you have a long-term vision for your author brand, then I would say it's worth it. So what is it that the book How to Be Your Own Bodyguard has? It has a way to be found that isn't using Amazon's internal traffic. And this is how I found the book. I found it through one video. And when I checked, this was the only video with thousands of views. There was one video with 1,700 views, but other than that, the rest were below 1,000. So all it took for me to make a purchase was to listen to one video on YouTube about the book. So whenever we buy something like this, it's worth questioning how it occurred and what we can learn from it. In this case, it shows the power of external traffic. I would argue that most of his sales probably comes from external traffic because his title is not very keyword optimized, nor did I see any Amazon ads, and the book is not ranking high in certain categories either. Now, the best way is if we're able to combine both Amazon's internal traffic with our own external traffic. That's when we can see the best results for our books. Ideally, we want a strong brand as well. In this case, the author's online brand is not super prevalent, so perhaps his brand in real life is even stronger. He has another component working in his favor, which is the authority component. Him having worked as a protection agent for over 25 years provides instant credibility to the book, which provides another reason to choose his book. Depending on which niche you're in, this credibility component will vary in importance. For example, if you're buying coloring books, you're probably not going to care who designed the books if the coloring pages included look amazing. I dive deeper into branding inside the self-publishing trifecta in the Driven Publishers Elite, but for now, think about ways to generate the compounding effect using the power of branding. Simply look at what I've done in this video. I've talked about a self-published book that I've enjoyed, and I wouldn't be surprised if at least one person who views this video will end up buying it. So if you're able to set this in motion, you might have one reader recommend your book without any of your involvement. And if you have a series of books, that next person who buys it might buy more than just one book. And that's when the snowball effect has started. There you have it. 12 truths and 9 years of brutally honest Amazon KDP advice that I would tell myself earlier in my journey and that I keep reminding myself of. I advise you to save this video and revisit it whenever you feel lost, because it will help you regain focus on the things that matter. If you're serious about self-publishing and have the resources to invest in yourself and your growth, I invite you to apply for the Driven Publishers Elite. It's the first link in the description. Now, depending on when you watch the video, enrollment might have closed. So if that's the case, I advise you to join the waiting list inside the Driven Publishers Elite. You'll get access to the exact framework I use to consistently produce profitable books in this competitive marketplace. I created it for those who don't want to go through 9 years of self-publishing and millions of dollars spent in order to learn the lessons I've gathered along the journey. Regardless if you join us or not, I wish you the best of luck in your publishing journey and that you're able to achieve all your goals and dreams.